concept through to production, millions of users worldwide rely on SOLIDWORKS. Renowned for its extensive capabilities and ease of use, SOLIDWORKS is the industry-standard design tool that gives you the ability to develop incredible products on time and under budget. Great ideas start with a sketch. In SOLIDWORKS, this is simple and intuitive with instant feedback and a palette of tools right at your fingertips. Even the most complex ideas are easy to realize. Life is in 3D, and so are your designs in SOLIDWORKS. Instantly generate 3D shapes with a host of features. As a parametric design tool, SOLIDWORKS enables you to modify design dimensions precisely, either numerically or with on-screen manipulators. Intelligence is central to SOLIDWORKS with predictive AI assistance to eliminate tedious tasks. SOLIDWORKS includes extensive libraries of commonly used geometries with engineering and tolerancing information built in. 3D design comes alive when virtually assembling your components. Parts and assemblies can be snapped together with a simple drag and drop, visualizing range of motion and mimicking real-life behavior. Smart fasteners streamline the addition of hardware such as nuts, bolts, and washers. These automatically resize based on standards to fit the application. Designs can be interrogated for fit, interferences, mass properties, and much more. SOLIDWORKS efficiently handles even the most complex assemblies containing many thousands of parts. SOLIDWORKS makes documenting and detailing your designs quick and easy. Starting with a standard drawing sheet, 2D views are conveniently dragged into place from a view palette. Automatic projection views are created, and section views can be generated by snapping to model references. Existing model dimensions can be revealed with a single click, or create additional dimensions with intuitive formatting and tolerance options. Assembly drawings illustrate components in context with prominent exploded views. Automatic bills of materials and item balloons make understanding the design easy for manufacturers and suppliers. Many great designs are created by a team of talented people. Securely save your data to the cloud to leverage powerful integrated tools that keep every member of the team informed and contributing at every step. Share design data within your organization and never lose a file again with powerful search and tagging functionality. Track how items are used and easily visualize how they relate to one another. Lock files when making changes in order to prevent accidental overwrites. Share 3D data outside your organization while protecting intellectual property. Recipients can view and comment with no download or install required. Markups are attached directly to the model and are available instantly to help guide your design decisions. Easily create and track revisions, all within the design workspace, giving full model history and traceability. SOLIDWORKS offers purpose-built tools for specialized workflows. Create accurate sheet metal parts with industry-specific features. Flat patterns stay up to date for rapid distribution to manufacturing. Dedicated framing system tools automate the process of generating welded and bolted structures. An accurate cut list is automatically created to keep scrap to an absolute minimum. Powerful surface design tools give you control over even the most complex shapes. Visual inspection methods validate the quality of the surface. Simplify complex 3D routing of pipes, tubes, and cables while optimizing paths. And the power of SOLIDWORKS doesn't end there. With a whole ecosystem of integrated tools that grow alongside your business. Leverage next-generation browser-based modeling, virtually test designs before prototypes are built, generate toolpaths for integrated manufacturing, create electrical schematics, route 3D paths and plan for PCB designs, effectively manage bills of materials, render stunning marketing content, and so much more. SOLIDWORKS is the industry standard for mechanical CAD design and provides everything you need to bring your designs to life in less time and at lower cost. For more information, contact your local reseller or explore our website.
Premier is a grassroots company of local people, some of the best engineers I know, and they use SOLIDWORKS.
When it first came out, it was much easier to use than other solid modeling type packages. I think it continues to be that way. The menus are intuitive, easy to understand. You don't have to be that expert user to take advantage of a lot of its features. If you are that expert user, it has those, but you can operate at that entry-level user and do really well. It's important to have a package that you can be efficient at with minimal training and minimal seat time on the modeling.
One of the machines that we use SOLIDWORKS to design is our medium drill. The medium drill is used to put in utility cables for phone lines, electrical lines, fiber optics throughout the world. It is a very complex machine with a lot of hydraulics and electrical on board. A lot of features to help the drillers make good decisions, whether it's water or sewer lines. And we use SOLIDWORKS for the entirety of that design. There's no other CAD for mechanical design here at Vermeer.
There's so many other little parts of the SOLIDWORKS that we integrate with as far as doing structural analysis. Being able to do multiple configurations, I think, is nice. Weight was a big issue for us. We had to maintain a certain max weight. It had the weight distribution on the semi-trailer versus the tires, and we had to move the center of gravity around.
It's so fun to be able to show a concept to someone who's not in front of SOLIDWORKS every day to try to explain to them maybe how a part fits together. You can quickly show them any of those parts. You can show them the inside of the part, you can show them the back side, you can rotate around a little bit, you can communicate faster, get on the same page.
One of the advantages of working with SOLIDWORKS is our ability to reuse components throughout many different models of drills. And many of those components can be reused from one drill to another. Take an idea from one drill, size up the geometry with SOLIDWORKS' parametric modeling. It speeds up your process, but you change the part once, and it propagates that change throughout the assembly models that part is used in.
When we make these changes, we reduce design cycle times, which reduces cost, and we improve quality. So it's kind of a cheaper, faster, better all at the same time.
When I started, Vermeer was significantly smaller. SOLIDWORKS continued to grow with us and allowed us to do the things that we needed to do that our customers and our team members have been asking for. I would say SOLIDWORKS is one of the reasons why we picked the next move.
We wanted a platform that worked on the cloud. Then we wanted to be able to integrate different business units and be able to replicate those processes globally. The 3D Experience platform provided that level of functionality that we needed to grow as a company and continue to get more efficient in those processes.
It's a very versatile, useful software that doesn't restrict us, just a matter of your imagination, what you can come up with.
Wow. Holy crap.
Wow. This is it.
30 years ago, I was, whoa.
Probably sitting in middle school, wondering when my next break or lunch or maybe even nap time, hopefully back then, right?
30 years ago? Oh my God, 30 years ago, I was probably just crawling.
I was 2 years old.
30 years ago.
I was walking around in diapers, just starting high school.
Probably had Happy Meal breath.
I was in 6th grade, perhaps playing Oregon Trail on the computer lab.
I have to remember what 30 years ago was.
I wasn't even born yet.
It would have been when I was a sophomore in college.
Probably junior year of high school and in a shop class.
2010? Yeah, 2010.
2013.
2014, over 20 years ago.
I want to say it was like back in 2000.
January of 1996. I see this demonstration and it was like, I never felt more certain that I was seeing the future. I knew that I was really seeing something amazing, something revolutionary.
I'm hoping it starts to become things that you see in like a sci-fi movie, maybe.
AI.
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 AI is going to be incorporated in things I don't even know about. It's going to help take that load off.
Shorten development times, improve collaboration, and being like a lot more interconnected.
It's exciting to see the possibilities, right, and where it's going.
I know that there's quite a bit of connecting with others on the platform, I think, that we'll start to see unfold a bit more over the next couple of years. Revision history, commenting on parts, and being able to ask a designer to go in and change something.
I'll probably still be using SOLIDWORKS on a daily basis. It keeps me young, you know. I just have so much daggone fun with it.
I think that there's a lot of growth, and we're just barely scratching the surface.
Happy birthday, SolidWorks.
Happy birthday, SolidWorks.
Happy 30th birthday, SolidWorks. We love and support you very much.
Happy 30 years to SolidWorks.
Happy 30th.
Big 3-0, so you're starting to crest the hill and getting up there with the rest of us. Happy birthday, SolidWorks.
Happy birthday, SolidWorks.
SolidWorks, happy 30th.
Happy birthday, SolidWorks. We've been incredible friends for a very long time. You've always been here for me, and I'll always be there for you as well. So again, happy birthday.
Vermeer is fully integrated. We take raw steel and we make machine drawings, so we make assembly drawings. We do virtually everything right here on the mile. Vermeer, when I started, was a $300 million company. Now it's a $2 billion company. SolidWorks has grown with us to the size that we are today. When I started, it would have been '89, and drafting boards were the tool at the time at which we created our engineering drawings. Then we wanted to get into assembly drawings, and that's when we got into trouble. 2D collapses and falls apart.
We'd have all the parts laid on top of each other, but that was only in one dimension. It's very common to design something up and then find out these parts don't even fit together.
And so how do we move to the next step? And that's when we knew we had to start thinking in 3D. It became, who are we going to team up with to move towards the next one? It became SolidWorks.
SolidWorks was brought on board in 1999. We were the first SolidWorks customer to have over 100 seats of SolidWorks.
The speed, comparing 2D to 3D, there's a huge difference there. We had to do overlays because we could only put 32K in one file.
It didn't require the engineer to have so much imagination about how parts fit together. It made the engineering job so much easier.
When I saw SolidWorks, I was like, this is going to completely change and revolutionize mechanical design.
The ability and the power that has grown with it over time has really been nice, where before we could pull in a few parts, small assemblies, just because of the hardware limitations. Nowadays, I can pull in an entire machine of thousands of parts, and it runs quite well.
We can model things, we can learn how things fit before we build the physical thing, which really accelerates our time frame.
And that all was about how we communicate the complexity of our machines throughout the organization.
That ability of SolidWorks to bring things older, newer, more quickly, it just continues to accelerate. It allows us to offer repair parts. It allows us to keep designs similar from older and newer things rather than having to do complete start over. We can always use some amount of past data to help us with those future things. And now we're getting into the simulation type things, that confidence that if you have a design, you really understand what the loading's going to do to it, how the parts are going to fit together, you understand how they move together. That really allows you to focus on the actual engineering and designing things. Makes the job continue to be fun.
In July of 2018, we had a EF3 tornado.
This one didn't stop. This one actually did hit. So we lost, I'm going to say, a third of our manufacturing square footage.
And our goal was to actually get back up into production. Part of that was to find different manufacturing locations throughout the area.
We were scattered out and about, and we were still able to function.
We were back up into full production in 60 days.
The year of the tornado, we had a record year. The backbone that we put in to run SolidWorks, we were able to run it at any location.
The partnership with SolidWorks and Dassault Systems continues to grow. We would not be the company we are today without SolidWorks. It is used for 100% of all our mechanical CAD design, and we use it worldwide.
Over the next 10 to 15 years, I expect the Vermeer SolidWorks relationship to continue to grow, to solve the new problems, to leverage the new technology. The next generation can come and see the work of the past, and then we can keep absorbing and growing our knowledge base as a company.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to What's New in SOLIDWORKS 2026. I am so excited to be here. I hope you can tell. I'm so excited to see so many of you here in the live chat. If I'm looking down, it's probably at my phone just to see where your comments and your questions are. But once again, welcome. I see Joy, Jeff, Book 3D, Ivan Lowen, Brad Hakeman. I see people from Thailand, Barbados, Bangladesh, Florida, of all places, right? So once again, thank you so much for jumping on. So I think you'd all agree that the release of a new major version of SOLIDWORKS, this being SOLIDWORKS 2026, it's a special time of year, right? And this is a very special episode of SOLIDWORKS Live. And I just wanted to say that the reason why in my heart I feel this is such a special episode and such a special time of year is really because of you. It's because of the millions of you across the globe, as I mentioned, watching, tuning in, engaging with the What's New materials that we create year in and year out. So once again, from all of us here at SOLIDWORKS, thank you so much for caring to see, right, what is new and hopefully the next version that you install or the first version you buy of SOLIDWORKS. So I can say, as part of this project team, really, we are the ones who dig into the new features and make the demonstrations that show you what they're capable of. This is really a marathon. Like we started this project months and months ago just to get to this point. We put in countless hours for you guys because we want to be able to show you how the new features in SOLIDWORKS, the new enhancements in this new major version of SOLIDWORKS, SOLIDWORKS 2026, are going to enhance your actual real-world workflows. So once again, thank you so much. A big part of that, though, as I look back, let's say to SOLIDWORKS 2025, a big part of that is our partner customer for the release. And in 2025, I want to give a special shout out. That was Proteus Motion. So I got the great chance, and many of us did here on the new feature and enhancement team, the project team here at SOLIDWORKS. We had a great chance to get very familiar with Proteus Motion, and they tout their product as a sports science lab in a box. And I would have to say, I agree very much with that assessment after having actually used the product myself. And you might be thinking, Sean, you're not in the NFL, you're not in the NBA, you're not a pro soccer player. Well, neither are many of their users. Surely they have players in the NFL that are using them for resistance and strength training, rehab, biomarker capture, but also everyday individuals who are just trying to, improve from an injury or rehab. So if you haven't heard of them, go to proteusmotion.com. You can check out lots of demos and testimonials from Proteus. And once again, thank you to the Proteus team holistically for all of their partnership going forward, and especially for the SOLIDWORKS 2025 campaign. Now, for 2026, as you have undoubtedly already seen, we have partnered with Vermeer. So Vermeer, you probably have seen them in a variety of capacities, but they're really the industry standard when it comes to the design, the manufacture, and the support of high quality industrial and agricultural equipment. Now, one thing that's interesting about Vermeer, among many other things, is that Vermeer has really been with us since close to the beginning of this crazy 30-plus year journey of SOLIDWORKS. And I think I speak for everyone here at SOLIDWORKS in saying that I couldn't be, and we couldn't be prouder to showcase their awesome horizontal driller while bringing you the latest and greatest enhancements inside of SOLIDWORKS 2026 with this release, especially as part of this episode. So you might be thinking, Sean, you've been talking a lot, you've been saying hello, you've been giving a lot of thanks to us and to, of course, our partner customers, but what's going on today? What exactly is on the agenda? What's the format going to be for today? So that's actually what I have up on my screen. So with this launch episode of SOLIDWORKS 2026, we've prepared demonstrations from the actual demo creators who dug deep into the software and really took the time to understand not only the picks and clicks, but the why behind the features for parts, assemblies, drawings, user experience elements, PDM, collaborative features, simulation, routing, and ECAD inside of SOLIDWORKS to share with all of you today. And I've asked each SOLIDWORKS 2026 introduction team member to select their favorite three. So their favorite three enhancements in honor of 30 years of SOLIDWORKS. within their specific subject area for us to discuss at some length. And what I've also done is I've selected one of my favorites in the subject area, one that did not show up in SOLIDWORKS 2025, the general availability release, but one that did show up in subsequent functional deliveries, iterative releases. You might think of them as service packs. We now call them functional deliveries or FDs. So FD01, FD02, FD03, these come out throughout the year in each major domain. So if you're unfamiliar, just to explain that a little bit more with this change, we now do release new features and enhancements several times per year, which we cover in a variety of formats, to be clear. But one of the major ways that we do that is via a video podcast that we've launched here on the SOLIDWORKS YouTube channel and Spotify, actually. And it's called SOLIDWORKS Delivery Day. So you can watch it, you can listen to it in the car. And typically the format is, it's light, we joke around, but also we capture each of the 15 plus major enhancements, ones that we've hand selected and demoed that our team highlights for each functional delivery, each FD. So definitely check that out. Now, housekeeping wise, I gave a shout out to several of you in the chat already. To be clear right now, I'm looking at my clock. It is 11:07 Eastern. It is October 16th. It is Thursday. We are live right now. We are looking at the YouTube chat today. We fully plan to get to as many comments and questions as we can. But before we get into some interesting new features and enhancements, we have dozens to show you today. I wanted to bring on two leaders of the SOLIDWORKS R&D group to discuss recent trends and focus areas that have, and I would say continue to inform what makes SOLIDWORKS what it is today at a capabilities level. So please join me virtually in welcoming on for an R&D update, Bruce Holloway and John Sweeney. What's up, guys?
Hey, Sean. Hey, Sean.
Nice to have you. Awesome to have you. So I always want to have you on here during the live What's New launch episode here to talk about what's going on in R&D, because R&D is a huge part of what makes SOLIDWORKS SOLIDWORKS, right? So my first question is, in your minds, we've been around for over 30 plus years. That is a huge accomplishment. Thanks to our community, thanks to the hard efforts from you guys and many across the globe, to be sure. But what do you think it is that's really made us all so successful to get to this point, that huge accomplishment of 30 years? And what significance today do you think our users will be interested to hear about when it comes to SOLIDWORKS R&D and what you guys are working on as we head into 2026?
Yeah, it is amazing. I can't believe it's been 30 years. I mean, it seems like yesterday we were, kicking this off and all the excitement around it. But, to me, I think it's an easy question. I think we have a great set of products, obviously, but it boils down to me, to the people, right? The employees we've had since day one, the customers that have joined us, the community that's built up around it. There's just this level of passion throughout that. And it is like a family. It's like the employees and the customers we meet every year at World. We're visiting Bruce's team and we love seeing what they create, right? The innovation that comes out of this. And we're, a small piece of this, but we get a lot of pride in, seeing things around us as we walk through grocery stores, as you see excavating equipment, you're behind a knapheide truck. I mean, there's countless things we see in the world. They're like, hey, that's one of our customers. We had a piece of that. And it's exciting. We have a lot of mechanical engineers with us here. And it's exciting to see that and be a small piece of it.
I was just going to say, I mean, we used to have that campaign back in the day. I'm sure a lot of you have seen it. SOLIDWORKS is everywhere. And you go to a party, you say, what are some apps you use or where do you work or whatever. Like it's in some ways the easiest thing to explain in that way. You just point to an object and it's like, that probably was designed in SOLIDWORKS.
Yeah, sure. And it's not just the things that you see that are designed. It's also the things you don't see. In other words, every product that's mass produced, the machinery, the production lines to produce that, typically that's SOLIDWORKS. We dominate in that industry. And so you walk through the supermarket, anything that's a packaged good, chances are the equipment that makes it was designed in SOLIDWORKS. The drugstore, same thing, and anything mass produced. But I do feel that a key reason to our success is that we have always listened to our customers and our users from day one. It really has been our religion, and we train every PD person to do that, to focus on what the needs of the customer are. So that means, yes, we're always looking at enhancement requests. We implement hundreds of user requests every year, but we also get out there and visit the customers in person. And really that gives us a better ability to understand their challenges, their needs, their ambitions. And so we take that information back and we're able to enhance the product in ways they did not even ask for. So deliver things to them that improve their efficiency, make them happy, but they didn't even have to very specifically request that. So listening has always been huge with us. Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny. It really does drive what we do. I've been to 10 customer sites this year, and the feedback you get, the understanding of their business, the challenges that they are facing, it drives what we need to do, right, and what we want to do. I can think of an example. It was a local company here that was struggling with essentially best practices. We wanted to recommend to them more proactively, how can we help you without you having to struggle? What can we do? And we're doing a lot of stuff around AI, as are a lot of companies, right? And we have just a huge pipeline of what we're planning to do. But this specific customer led to us thinking we need to do more with agents. We need to help customers more proactively. And how can we do that? And AI, we think, is going to really be an avenue for that.
Yeah, it really it opens up so many possibilities, and we are scrambling on all of them. It's you may have seen the automated drawings, or the automated fastener recognition, which is really cool. You drag in a component that looks like a fastener. It doesn't matter if you just designed it a second ago or it was imported or whatever, and you just drag it in. It recognizes it. And then it knows where it fits. It knows where it can be mated, how it, and it'll produce those mates and snap it into holes and snap washers on. So it's just massive increase in productivity. We've got tons of things like that in the pipeline. So very exciting time for us with AI technologies.
And that's a great hit ahead, I would say, to different aspects, different parts of the rest of the episode. Actually, the next segment after this one, we'll be seeing some actual demos of some of that functionality. So we'll be seeing that and how it's been introduced into current day SolidWorks, which is awesome. I just wanted to shout out so I see some people in the chat shouting out the enhancement request portal, which is great to see people are involved there. See a bunch of you joining the show here, so thanks for joining. But yeah, awesome stuff here.
Yeah, and Charlie, I think you mentioned about the things, what are we doing that customers might be interested in? I think, Bruce highlights the AI stuff that's on everyone's mind. We see it everywhere. But at the same time, we're doing the stuff we've always done, right? We're working on quality and performance. I remember here last year and when we presented World, we're always trying to give updates on that. I think I gave you some slides on the performance. This is an update from last year. So we have a performance initiative where we're breaking down essentially the simplifying the roles. Like if you're working on drawings or you're someone who works on assemblies, what are all the steps that person might do during the day? And the example here is for assemblies. So you can see the workflow on the right of what we're testing for performance and all the different workflows on the left. So, we break it down like that and we measure everything, and we continue to work on this. And last year, I think in this meeting, we looked at the slides from last year, it was we've had a 30% improvement compared to SolidWorks 2023. And now we're up to around 48%. So the team is doing an amazing job to really drive the pieces of this, just raw performance, fixing software, improving software, re-architecting where needed. And there's more work to do, right? We've got the whole bottom half of the list we're still working on. This is all automated, so we get these measurements now. We're not running them daily, but probably every other day. We can track if something regresses and fix it before it goes out. And we can track our progress, which is, again, you can see the numbers are just fantastic.
Yeah, this is a fascinating insight. You know, you gave me these numbers, you gave me the data. I basically made it look like the rest of the show. I didn't accomplish any of this. I basically just beautified some of this stuff, if I may say so myself. But this is a huge reason why I think it's so integral to start off this sort of episode with this type of discussion, because you know, we many of us have been using SOLIDWORKS for many years in different capacities across different types of roles. We know that you have your workflows, and many of these workflows here are very common, as you said, very common user workflows. And so it needs to be said, yeah, we're going to show dozens of new enhancements that hopefully enhance those workflows and make them easier and better, more assistive, right? All the buzzwords that you like to hear around this time of year for useful features and enhancements, but also making the software, again, and just in terms of standard usability in all these very major and popular ways, that much quicker, that much more efficient. Yeah, it needs to be talked about the efforts that you guys are putting in hand with the users, I think is awesome.
Yeah, you know, in addition to just raw performance, we've got a bunch of activities, a bunch of projects that are going to increase your efficiency, your productivity. Example, the background downloader. Now, when you import a massive step file, it doesn't lock up it does it in the background, and you continue working, and it notifies you. Partial open. You got a massive assembly. You want to work on a sub area. You can open that and do your work. This is going to be huge. No need to open the whole thing or create sub-assemblies. DSPBR is a real-time rendering right in SOLIDWORKS. Really cool stuff. I think you're gonna love a lot of these.
Yep. Yeah, this is these are things that I think I envision as our audience here is hearing them described, like, wait, what? What is that? So you gotta stay tuned the rest of the episode. We're gonna cover all that stuff. But yeah, these are some big ones for sure. So awesome. Yeah. So I think, you know, we talk a lot about community. Of course, we saw various community members who were out at our Waltham headquarters, you know, just this past year, talking about 30 years of SOLIDWORKS. What were you doing 30 years ago, kind of stuff? And, you know, when did you first begin using SOLIDWORKS? Our community, it needs to be said. I try to say it as often as I can. You guys, you were a huge part of what we do, everyone watching today around the world. But, you know, specifically within an R&D context, how can our community play a part in delivering their enhancement ideas and delivering their performance needs to you guys?
Well, definitely make use of the enhancement request, enhancement ideas community. We look at that. We're always digging, always following it. We also have the top 10, which is a kind of special version of that for World, because we look at that and we announce at World exactly what we have done to address these. It's been a very popular event for 20 years, 20 plus years. So, of course, get involved, you know, with everything. User group meetings, World, 3-year reseller. We're always listening. So the more you get out there and communicate with us, the more we'll respond.
Sean, just to follow up there, because I want to make a point. It's not just about enhancements, right? We want to hear about problems. If there's software bugs or struggles you're having that, even though it doesn't sound like an enhancement, whether it's crash data, again, send us the data, reach out to your reseller. Certainly for you know, stability things, we want to hear it. If we can reproduce it, we'll fix it, right? And that's, you know, that on its own is a really important thing to keep reminding people. Please tell us directly if you have problems that we can fix for you.
Awesome. Yeah, and to that point, you mentioned, John, your value-added reseller. Your reseller is a great resource for that. It's kind of a first line of support. They're fielding these questions very often. They know the right protocols. You don't have to keep in your mind, do I go route A, route B, route C, route D? It's usually a great first call or email or message in that sense. And yeah, I think the forums as well. You know, the forums are also a great sort of interpersonal resource. I believe, Bruce, you mentioned the top 10 list. I believe that's the highlighted post within the SOLIDWORKS user forum 3D Swim today. So very easy to check that out all the same. But to look for answers, historical answers, as well as to ask questions if you have them, and you're looking for more of a user to user style response for a query. So awesome.
Yeah.
Well,
We're also working, just a little preview, we're working on feedback within SolidWorks. So you can reach out directly, you can give us direct feedback. You can also open up bugs, service requests directly from within the software. So just making it easier to reach us.
Whether you guys believe me or not, in the chat, I did not know that. So that is awesome. That is so cool. I can't
It's
wait.
not in yet, but it is being worked on.
All right. So, well, whenever that comes out, you'll either be on this show next year or you'll be on an episode of Delivery Day for that. I'll have to pull you into our podcast studio. So, but once again, guys, thank you so much for everything you do. Thank you for jumping on here. And yeah, next time I'll probably see you is at 3D Experience World this upcoming February in Houston. So we'll have to grab a coffee or something.
Sounds good.
Thanks for having us, Sean.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, guys.
All right. I hope you enjoyed once again that talk with our two R&D leaders here. So we're going to get into the demos now. And I was looking back through some previous episodes of What's New. The What's New episode of SolidWorks Live for 2025 and 2024 and 2023. And like Bruce and John sort of highlighted there are different enhancements that might mean a bit more to certain use cases or certain industries, certain types of users. But I also think that there are certain types of enhancements that really are impactful or stand to be impactful to almost any SolidWorks user out there. And so we wanted to add this segment here called Feature Spotlight to go over these spotlight features, this handful of features where, hey, if you walk away with nothing else today in terms of new enhancements and new features, you really should know about these. And I thought of no one better to come on and talk about these than my SolidWorks Delivery Day year-round co-host, Jesse Sprague. What's going on, Jesse?
Hey, Sean, how's it going?
Do you agree with that assessment? You're probably the best guy for this one, right?
I'm happy to be here. I'm happy to be here.
You don't confirm or deny. You just tell me you're happy to be here. So
that's right. I don't know if I'm the man for the job, but I'm happy to be here.
So I'm watching the chat. Let's see. So let's see here. So I see Steve, Jeff, Deepak. Awesome. So I did want to give a housekeeping item for those of you in the chat. If you do have a general technical question, I don't want to ignore those. You can always use the forums or contact your value-added reseller. Just want to give that a shout. I see a couple of these that are just more kind of merit further investigation type queries. So definitely check in with your value-added reseller, or you can always use the user forums here as well. Or in the chat, help each other there. But this feature spotlight feature sort of section, Jesse. So this one is a section, once again, just wanted to get ahead of some features that every SolidWorks user should know about. And I wanted your help in highlighting some of them, not just because we tend to do a lot of that together these days, but also because a couple of these actually came out prior to 2026. Now, I'm not saying reporting over things that came out in 2024 or 2023, but they might have come out just like 2 or 3 months ago as part of a functional delivery, right?
Yeah, that's been the fun part actually with doing the Delivery Day show is you and I get a chance to see the kind of string that goes through all of these. A lot of them have gotten enhancements that, in FD, and then the next FD it gets enhanced again, and then the next FD it gets enhanced again. So it's fun for the two of us to kind of go through and see how those get those incremental changes and see the strings that kind of tie all of these together.
For sure. So without further ado, I see that somebody giving a heart eyes emoji there. Thank you for that. I think it's for you, Jesse. But
no coincidence that when I come on, yeah.
Always happens, yeah.
Yeah.
Without further ado, though, let's get to that first spotlight feature that we will highlight as part of this segment.
Let's see it.
Show that the first spotlight feature video there. So this first one we're going through is called selective loading. Bruce sort of hinted at it. It came out in 2025 FD03. So if you had watched that episode of Delivery Day for FD03 and you can still watch it, you would have seen this. However, we do have some brand new demos with some brand new capabilities that we did not show in that particular episode. So essentially what we're seeing, if we could just play this through one more time, just to make it super clear. So essentially what we're seeing within this demo and what selective loading promises is potentially a much easier way, a much quicker way of working with particularly larger assemblies. So the tools you're seeing now, you might be thinking, this isn't SolidWorks. This isn't the SolidWorks design package. Like, what is this? What you're doing is you are going into the browser environment and you are making what we call filters. you're basically filtering out different sort of assortments of components, let's say in a top level assembly. You're not making a new assembly file. You are not, making a new sub-assembly. You're not making a configuration. You're making what's called a filter object. And you can define the filter in a variety of ways. In this demo, we're showing that you can base a filter, a saved filter, in this case of a vice clamp, which we can name the filters, based on the proximity of a selected component to other components, physically speaking. And then once we have that filter, it's saved and it's referenceable. And one of the ways it's referenceable and usable is inside of SOLIDWORKS, SOLIDWORKS Design. So we can take that filtered view of that top level assembly without having to add any extra file overhead or anything like that. And we can begin adding components, for example, or adding mates to components. So we saw in this example, we made that vice clamp filter of the top level Vermeer assembly. We brought that into SOLIDWORKS and we started adding hardware to it. Now, if you've been using SOLIDWORKS for some time, if you've ever worked with large assemblies, you know that, hey, larger assemblies, they might take a bit more time than if you have a smaller assembly to open and to work with and to add things to and to manipulate, to add mates, etc. Well, this makes it a lot easier to do those sorts of things much more expeditiously there. So you're able to drag in the filtered view of the assembly or filtered version of the assembly, make changes there, and any changes you make inside of there will be then reflected through to the top level because you're basically just working on it in a different capacity. So this one, I think, is going to be very, very interesting to not only continue to explore into the future, into FDO1, FDO2, FDO3 as it continues to improve and be enhanced, but also to explore throughout the rest of this episode, to be frank. We'll show different ways of filtering, different ways of taking advantage of those filtered assemblies inside of SOLIDWORKS. For now, though, this is pretty exciting, right? You can add components, add mates to a filtered view of an assembly without adding any extra file overhead there. So Jesse, what are your thoughts here?
Yeah, it's really cool. You know, when you and I talked about doing this little segment of showing off maybe just a few, it's like it's so hard to pick from this entire list of things what we would show, but this is the first thing that came to my mind. I was like, this has to be one of them, right? And it's rare that we get something that comes along that I think has so many new use cases. SOLIDWORKS is such a mature product at this point that we're making incremental changes on things that are improving efficiency and all of that, but it seems like it's pretty rare that we get something that comes along that's like, oh, wow, I need to like stop and think about all of the different things I could do with this. And I can't wait until this gets out into your hands, the customers, and see what you do with this, because I'll be really curious to see all of the different ways you can figure out how to use this, because there is like almost seemingly infinite options for what you can do with this. And that's what I'm excited for this one. It's going to be a really flexible tool to save a whole bunch of time.
Yeah, and just before we move off of this one to the second one, I see some questions in the chat. This is if you have SOLIDWORKS Design, the CAD application many of us use, whether it's sort of managed in a named user capacity where you're launching it from 3D Experience, or if you're using what we've historically called desktop with a serial number, you should have this capacity, right? Like you can activate cloud, what we call cloud services, you can make the filters there, and you can open the filters out of the add-in into SOLIDWORKS. So
yeah, definitely. And if you haven't activated that yet, I think this would be the time. This is one that's definitely worth activating to check out this functionality in my mind.
Yeah, so I see some comments here. So many ways to filter. Filter, I'm using time-saving feature. Awesome, Vishal. Thank you so much for that comment. It's very cool. Filters, wow. Cool. Yeah, I mean, I understandably so. I would guess that many of you watching this haven't used it yet, but it merits saying once again that even if you have not gone to even if you don't plan on going to 2026, let's say in the next 6 months or 8 months or whatever, if you're on 2025 as of FDO3, you can use this. Like,
yeah, great point
there, right? So, but Jesse, we'll get the spotlight. We'll get to selective loading again in some other capacities later on in the episode, but let's get to our second spotlight feature here.
Yeah, sure. Well, I mean, we can't have a spotlight list that I'm involved with that doesn't have something to do with making things look pretty, right? So the next one that we'll take a look at is rendering directly from SOLIDWORKS. Mic drop on that one, right? We've had different variations of this. I'm sure everyone on the call now knows that I'm a huge fan of SOLIDWORKS Visualize. If you haven't opened Visualize, go open Visualize. But we've now integrated the two of these together even more tightly than we had in the past. Last year, we got API access, so you could write custom tools that would send things to your rendering environment. one step further this year, where we can actually render directly out of SolidWorks itself. And Bruce mentioned I thought you and I, Sean, were going to steal everyone's thunder. Bruce came along and stole our thunder and mentioned some of these things too. But he mentioned DSPBR in there that you may have noticed in passing. But DSPBR is part of this as well. That is the appearance format that Visualize has been using for a bit now. SolidWorks now supports that as well. So these two things kind of go hand in hand. So you'll notice that SolidWorks itself will look a lot better if you use the appearances that are now in the 2026 library. And you'll notice that it is kind of one-to-one comparison when you're going to send those to Visualize or directly send them right out of SolidWorks into a rendering. So you'll get much more consistent results when going from SolidWorks to Visualize. And also we now have the capability of just one click, send it right out. If you're watching along in the demo, you notice one of the checkboxes in there is to use alpha. So this is a great way to just save out a bunch of images. If you're doing a design review or a presentation where you need to put a bunch of things in PowerPoint, you can just turn on that alpha channel. You'll get the transparency in the background, render, and send them all out, stick them in your presentation, and you're good to go. So I am obviously personally thrilled with this enhancement, and I think you guys will love it too. It has now dramatically reduced the amount of time that you can get a beautiful looking result for whatever your purposes are, web or presentations, by just doing it right out of SolidWorks.
Yeah, so I mentioned I gave a special debut to the SolidWorks user group leaders during their weekly call last week of all of the spotlight features we're showing here. And this one was a big one, and for some unexpectedly so, because like you said, it's like, well, and it's through a certain lens. Visualize has been around for 9 years, of course, just like any product that gets enhanced, but it's been around for 9+ years now.
Yeah.
But this ability to just very quickly, we've all done it. We've tried to do a save as PNG from SolidWorks, or we take a screenshot from the viewport of SolidWorks. Well, this gives you a much clearer, much more polished result. And you're able to do it very easily with some limited controls, really, right? Like you're basically specifying resolution, you're specifying the sort of relative quality through a dropdown. You have way more controls, and I would say still you maintain ease of use within SolidWorks Visualize, but still this is a cool enhancement from that regard.
Definitely, and there's some performance benefits there too. And of course, if you want the full control, there's buttons right next to the render button that you can just send it right into Visualize, and it will open in there, and you have full control. You've got your digital studio, if you will, if you want to go start cleaning things up. But yeah, you've got kind of the best of both worlds now, right? If you just need something quick that looks better, or you want to launch yourself into the full rendering environment and go to town to make something really impressive, you can do either one of those things very quickly right from the SolidWorks interface. So yeah, I'm really excited about it. And I think, content is one of those things that I think maybe people are timid to go into Visualize because it's a whole new interface and you got to learn what all the buttons are and what they do and all of that. But everybody really needs to make content in some regard these days, right? And it's either going on the web or it's going on social media or it's just made for presentations. And we now have kind of either option for you. You can do just something quick that looks a lot better than what you're at, or even if you're taking a screenshot the old school way, it's still going to look a lot better if you're using the new DSPBR appearances. So really improved across the board in every possible use case. So it's pretty cool.
Yes. So to be clear, that is out as of 2026, the general availability, that FD0, SP0, that first release, you will have access to that inside of SolidWorks Design, the SolidWorks Design package. I do want to get to now the third spotlight feature, which is fastener automation, which is something else that Bruce talked about. So if we could show the third spotlight feature here. So fastener automation, this actually debuted as of 2025 FD03. So Bruce talked a little bit about this, and I'll talk about this demo, but we can expand a little bit on some other aspects or some other areas where you might use this. So what we're seeing within this demo is we are dragging and dropping a SolidWorks part, a piece of hardware into SolidWorks. And what we're then seeing is that SolidWorks sort of just intuits where to, based on where you're dragging it on the assembly, right, in most cases, it intuits which mate and where to place the hardware and how to orient it. And it does it really just through drag and drop. There are no special, we aren't holding any keyboard keys or anything like that. We're doing a drag and drop. and it's going in. Now, these don't have to be toolbox parts. Like, these are not SOLIDWORKS toolbox parts. It could be any SOLIDWORKS part, right? So it's looking at it, and based on the geometry itself, it's then once again it's orienting it and adding the mates. It doesn't. Another caveat I would say, or another factor to consider, is that we know there are tons of different hardware sites and service providers, right? In terms of 3D CAD, it doesn't necessarily even have to be a SOLIDWORKS part. It could be a neutral file format as well. It works all the same, because it's really looking at a core level. It's looking at the geometry when it's doing the sort of snapping and fitting in. So yeah, we were really excited to debut this. I'm sure a lot of you were seeing this for the first time. Once again, if you're using SOLIDWORKS 2025 FTO3, it's there. And of course, when you install 2026, it'll be there all the same.
Yeah, the interesting thing to me with this one is, like you just mentioned, you can really use anything. It's not just SOLIDWORKS parts. A lot of times we get these features that we have control over what happens in the background. But with these, enhancements that are more AI geared, we can expand that out to all sorts of things and be a little bit more flexible with it. And this is a perfect use case for that kind of thing, because, like you just said, hardware comes from everywhere, right? It's not necessarily an afterthought, but it's something that you're not designing in-house, right? These are all generally purchased parts, unless it's some kind of custom thing that you're making. But on the whole, probably purchased parts. So you might want to use the efficiency of everyone in the world using 3D CAD these days, and pull in that information into SOLIDWORKS, which we can readily do. But now with systems like this, you can take all of the grunt work out of it, regardless of what you're doing. And I always love enhancements that make whatever you're doing across multiple workflows work the same. And this is one of those that does that, right? Whatever you're doing, as far as hardware goes, it works the same way now, wherever you got it. And I like that about this particular tool. I still don't know how this works. This is just black magic as far as I'm concerned. Every time I watch it, I'm like, how does it do that? But really cool.
It works.
It works.
So let's get to our fourth. So we have 4 spotlight features today before we get into our part and assembly enhancements in the next segment. But Jesse, let's get to our 4th spotlight feature here.
We do, yeah. We'll move on to the next one. And this one is also sort of AI related. I'll steal a little bit of Brad's thunder here on this one. But we have, and again, Bruce mentioned this one too. We have, AI generated drawings. This is another case where, the grunt work that you end up doing that doesn't need to be, you're not adding value as a designer when you're doing some of these things, can be taken out with some of these intelligent tools in the background. This is a perfect example of this, right? We've got sort of a batch automation of generating a drawing that's going to get you part of the way there. Everybody does drawings a little bit different at their company, and based on your preferences or based on how you have things set up in your company. But so much of the beginning is all the same, right? We all do the same thing. Every time we go to create a drawing, we create, grab our template and just start dragging and dropping things, drag and drop, drag and drop, and drag and drop, and add some dimensions and add our GTOL and all of that stuff. It's all the same at the beginning, right? And this is a tool that can help take that stuff that you're not adding any value, you're just doing the grunt work out of it, and let you add value where you do add value as the designer, and adding in the details and setting up all of the specifics at the end. Now, I mentioned, a batch process. You can watch this happening on screen now. We have the ability to do this kind of in bulk. And that's where I think this really expands its capabilities, or the amount of time that it's going to save you is, okay, you do this on one drawing. Sure, it saves you a couple minutes. But when you start doing this in bulk, that really starts to multiply across. If you've got a handful of parts even to do on a day, and you can get a 50% jump start on every single one of those in kind of an instant, then that really saves you a whole block of time in one shot there. So I think I'm pretty excited about this tool. And this is another one that we've kind of watched progress as we've gone through our delivery days. And we're excited to see how it's changed and evolved, even just in the short span of time that we've been playing with it already. So you can see it brings in all sorts of cool things, and it will even reference things like your DIM expert annotations and things like that. So you can start to manipulate your workflow into working with it even more efficiently as you go too. So super cool. And I'm excited about this as well.
Another example, to be sure, of AI driven functionality. And this is an example of a feature, as you said, it initially debuted back in 2025, FDO1. I see some questions in the chat about the distinction between functional delivery and service pack. they're kind of one and the same. We really one of the reasons at least that we kind of switched to using FD or functional delivery is really to sort of further just clarify that we are delivering new functionality, right? That is one, at least in terms of how I think of it, right? We're still, fixing any sort of performance issues or whatever on a sort of scheduled basis as part of those releases, but they're sort of one and the same. But this came out, initially debuted in a state as of FD01, and then we added on, like you mentioned, whole callouts, whole tables, and a bunch of other bits of functionality as of FD03 of 2025, and we'll continue, of course, to improve it and add to its capabilities and its accuracy. But yeah, I would say, at least as of right now, one thing that it does really well, it may not be able to exactly intuit your intent at this point, but one thing that I think it does really well is that task of just making, just like the demo shows, in one fall swoop, get 6 or 7 drawings created in a batch process. Like, that saves you a great deal of time. So even if nothing else, like if you were to look at like that end of that spectrum, if nothing else, that's definitely a time saver.
Yeah, I agree. And maybe one other thing to mention here is this is a static AI model, so it's not taking your drawings and sending them somewhere where it's learning or teaching the AI model. So that's not something they have to worry about with this. It's a pre-coded AI model that's just using its smarts to read. It's kind of a one-way street, right? So you don't have to worry about that aspect of it, because obviously our drawings could be where all of our sensitive information is. So you can put that aside and give it a try.
Cool. Well, Jesse, thank you so much for jumping on. Guys,
Absolutely.
watch Delivery Day. You'll see so many features like these. And also watch 3D Experience Pro, because Jesse and I will be anchoring the live show. Hopefully you'll see us at the booth in person. You'll just walk by us and you won't be watching on YouTube, but if you can't make it, understand, you can watch us on YouTube. But once again, Jesse, thank you so much for jumping on here on SolidWorks Live.
Yeah, thanks for having me. See you guys soon.
Thanks, man. All right, so as we move ahead here, we are on our way to looking at what's new in SolidWorks 2026 when it comes to 3D modeling, parts, and assemblies, right? And to join us here and to guide us through his favorite 3 enhancements in this area is Mark Peterson. Mark, what's going on?
Hey, Sean, how's it going?
It's going well. It's going well. So I asked you, just like I've asked each of the ensuing presenters, in honor of 30 years of SolidWorks, to pick your favorite 3 enhancements from the sort of parts and assembly environment specific to 2026, the first release of 2026 here. What do you got for us here today? What's your first favorite?
All right, so my first favorite is we're gonna start out with structure systems. So structure systems is just a great way to create welded structures without requiring you to create a line for each individual member like you would with weldments. And this just makes creating these types of parts extremely fast and efficient. So in SolidWorks Design 2026, structure systems corner treatments are now more consistently colored. So they indicate the corner type more consistently. And now when you select a complex corner to modify it, a brand new graphical selection pane will appear, and it gives you complete and intuitive control over that corner treatment and even better previews than what we had before.
Awesome. Yeah, so this is a big area. This is certainly a big area. When you start off thinking about parts and assemblies, right, as sort of at a macro level, but we know that parts can encompass a lot of things, right? Multi-body parts, such as some structure systems here and weldments and sheet metal, right? Sheet metal design, mold tools. So there's so much inside of SolidWorks here. And I'm sure this will make, and those corners, right, they're naturally occurring. So you have to, everyone who's using weldment structure systems, like, you have to deal with the corners. And so an enhancement of that area will surely be an efficiency booster, I would think. Awesome. Well, cool. All right. So what's the next? And guys, I'll keep looking at the chat here. Any questions, any comments you have, even if it's like, oh, that's really cool, or I could definitely see myself using that. Let us know in the chat. I'll keep hearing over for sure. But Mark, what's your second favorite enhancement, or one of your top 3 here?
All right, my second favorite enhancement I want to show today is around bounding boxes. So, which give us the lowest volume box or cylinder around a specific object. However, in some cases, we don't always want the smallest volume. Like if if the material has a grain direction or is anisotropic, like it's important that, we have some directionality to that bounding box sometimes. So in SOLIDWORKS Design 2026, you can specify the directions based off of a user coordinate system. So that means that the defined direction will always associate with the bounding box definition. So in this case, the bounding box width, which is the X direction, is 33 inches and is greater than the length of 30. Now we're going to change this part configuration to a shorter length. And now we can see that the bounding box width is 27 inches, while the bounding box length is maintained at 30 inches. So, that's a lot to keep track of. But the idea here is that even if the part geometry changes in a significant way, the sense of the bounding box will still be there. So it won't be confusing. It won't flip flop or do anything like that. It will always be maintained, which is really excellent.
So just to check in on the chat here, I see, wow, ooh, I like that. I like that. Weldments have been working very well for a long time. Yep. So, but the feature manager previews, etc., will be well served for some polishing. This is another area I would say with bounding boxes, right, Mark? Like I remember back, I'm not sure exactly which release it was or which point in time it was, but it used to be sort of like a hacky way. Like if you wanted a bounding box of a part, like you would have had to have I think added like a weldment feature and done something like that just to get that sketch and some of the properties. But we added the ability to add a bounding box sketch, I think a number of releases ago. And I guess we just continue to sort of enhance these capabilities here, which is awesome to see. Awesome. Well, cool. All right, Mark. So what's our third one of your top three, I should say. Maybe it's not exactly in order, but your third of three, I should say, in terms of parts and assemblies.
All right. Yeah, because I had to only choose three, it was pretty tough, but I'm going to choose my third one's going to be smart rebuild recognition. And this is really handy because sometimes when you're working on assemblies, you need to make a lot of changes, but not all the changes are physical changes to the assembly. So for example, we might want to change the reference geometry of a component. And every time you do something like that, it would require a save, a transfer of data to your hard drive or to a local storage location or to the cloud. And unnecessary saves just make you work slower. So with the new assembly save indicator appearing here, it kind of shows you that this is a cosmetic change and you don't actually need to make like an actual save to your local hard drive or to the cloud, which is going to make allow you to work a lot more efficiently. So a couple of examples here of things that you can do, like in this case where you can edit in the context of the assembly. We're changing the component's appearance, or even maybe editing a feature of the component, but without actually saving that edit. These are all cosmetic changes. In this example here, we open this component, in its own window, so you can sort of work however you naturally work with SOLIDWORKS assemblies, and still take advantage of this enhancement. So again, we're adding a reference plane here. We can see that that's just a cosmetic change. We can manipulate or modify that reference plane. We can hide or delete. As long as what we're doing, whatever operation, doesn't affect any sort of downstream features that affect the physical aspects of the assembly, these are all cosmetic changes. Adding a decal, for example, cosmetic change. So we're taking advantage of this, and this kind of goes back to the R&D conversation earlier. Improving these workflows and allowing us to work a lot more efficiently. So SOLIDWORKS Design 2026 really unlocks that for us and helps us, not have to do these physical saves all the time.
So just checking in on the chat again, I see Deepak Gupta says, of course, longtime member of the community, just saving the modified models only will help boost the performance. I see Jesse checking on the chat. I'm just here in the chat hoping Sean reads my comment so I can get on the show. Great. You're on the show.
You're on the show.
You satisfied your requirement there. And then Joy asks, with particular to the bounding box enhancement, can you select shape of the bounding box? Example, rectangular box versus round bar, thinking of machinists.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we have the radio button selection there in the UI that allows you to choose the rectangular versus the cylindrical bounding box for sure.
Cool. All right, so I'm going to turn the tables, Mark, if that's okay. I'm going to nominate one of my favorites. And once again, in terms of the little shtick we have going here, I want to nominate, with most of these, I'm nominating an enhancement that came out prior to 2026 as part of a functional delivery of 2025. Once again, this is not a feature that would have shown up, and I know this one did not show up. It was not released yet when we did the What's New in SOLIDWORKS 2025 episode. And that feature is selective loading. So I mentioned earlier, I'm going to go over this a little bit more in some more detail here. So in this selective loading example, what we're showing is we're creating another filter. That is not new. We showed that earlier, but we're making a filter based on property values. And we're also showing you can make filters based on a spherical volume. So if something is included or inclusive within a spherical volume you can draw on screen, it can be included in a savable filter that is referenceable within a maturity state. You can pass it through and you can have it in progress or released. So that's another way you can use them. And you can also reference them as part of drawings, which we're showing here. So if you have, and once again, you're not adding any file bulk or anything like that. You're not saving out another version of a file with an entirely new part number or anything like that. You are saving out a filter view that is referenceable, that is searchable, and is also insertable inside of SOLIDWORKS. And we didn't show this again earlier, but you can insert them as referenced drawing views. So in terms of limiting overhead with your larger assemblies, this is a great option, I would say, to investigate. And once again, this came out in 2025 FD03. So even if you're not making that full jump to 2026 soon, let's say within the next 6 or 12 months, you can still access this functionality. So Mark, your thoughts?
I mean, this is incredible. I mean, I can't imagine not being able to recognize the immediate performance benefits of using something like this, especially if you're working with large assemblies a lot and you're finding that you're struggling with that. This is incredible. So for anyone out there that's always sort of asking themselves the question of am I missing out on anything by not using the 3D Experience platform? Well, here's a great example of that. This is something that's powered by the 3D Experience platform and something that only we can do through that platform. And so I think this is an incredible marriage of the amazing benefits of SOLIDWORKS on your desktop, SOLIDWORKS design software, and the cloud, what the cloud brings to that. So, if you haven't merged your design process with the cloud, this is an excellent reason to do so.
And if you're thinking, hey, I have SOLIDWORKS PDM and I'm not going to use that, I mean, you have it. You have this. Just try it.
Yeah.
Try it, see if it gives workflow benefits. We also, just as a quick shout out as we end this segment here, on solidworks.com/what's new, that webpage, we actually have a full 3.5 minute video walkthrough on the merits of selective loading and how it works. So you can see that there after the episode. But Mark, thank you so much for jumping on. I think the next time we might see you on live is at 3D Experience World as part of the skit, maybe. We'll bring that back. So, and maybe we'll get a little preview of 2027. It's crazy to even say that out loud, but thank you so much for jumping on.
Looking forward to it, Sean. Thanks for having me.
All right. So, when we think about SOLIDWORKS design, right? SOLIDWORKS and design, those two words, they're pretty synonymous. And you might be thinking, and at first blush, I think to myself, hey, well, we're designing all these 3D shapes just like we talked about with Mark. And that's why that is the case. That's why they're so synonymous. That's why those terms seem inseparable. That's why the software is named what it's named, right? But I take it a step further. You think about drawings with many parts. If we don't have drawings, it's very hard to communicate manufacturing intent, among other things. And so without drawings, it's almost like that pairing doesn't sort of exist inextricably. So to talk about drawings, because it does need its day in the sun, I brought on Brad Williamson. Brad, what's going on?
Sean, what's up?
How'd you like that explanation?
That was fantastic. Yeah, drawings they are so rewarding to present, to get to work on the enhancements for drawings every year. It's really rewarding because I know how much impact that makes to people's bottom line in getting their work out the door faster.
So I brought you on here, and I'm checking in on the chat here just to see if anyone has any questions or comments. We'll keep looking at those, but of course brought you on here to talk drawings specifically for SOLIDWORKS 2026, and then we'll take our look back as we did with Mark to one of the functional delivery enhancements within 2025 that you may have missed if you're watching today. So the scheme here, right? It's your favorite three, or three of your favorites, I should say, from the 2026 release when it comes to drawing. So, Brad, what do you want to go through first?
Well, in general, I would say my top three, they fall into a category that, at least internally, we call them delighters. And this is the classification of enhancements that generally don't need a lot of explanation. They solve kind of a point or a specific type of problem, but when you see it, it's instantly recognizable as far as, wow, I could use that right away, and it's going to make my job faster or easier. So the three delighters I've picked, the first one we're going to take a look at has to do with breaking dimension lines around text. Okay, so if you recall, back in like 2013, I think it was, we had the ability to break dimension lines that cross other dimension or extension lines, but now we can make those dimension breaks around the text, which is really cool, and it really adds to, I guess, the overall readability of a drawing. If you think about a really busy drawing like we're seeing here with lots of dimensions, if you've got lots of extension lines all over the place and it's kind of overlapping the text, it's not out of the realm of possibility that, hey, a 3 could look like an 8 or something just because of a misplaced extension line. So what we've done now is just extended that original functionality to where the dimension lines break around the text, super clear, easy to read, and of course it follows the dimension around too. So if you move that dimension, the dimension text break goes with it. Really slick.
I would say as well, like, I think you and I have seen so many different drawings over the course of time, and even this one, I mean, there are a number of there are a number of dimensions, to be clear, but I've definitely seen cases where it would be even more obvious, especially if we're not very cleanly we have sort of an array of different dimensions, here and there, or if they're roughly on top of each other and we don't have things like super aligned, it can be really sort of crowded and almost chaotic in a certain sense. And so I think having that ability to be able to sort of break up the extension lines definitely benefits, I think, the virtual viewing experience, but also the print one, because the
Yeah,
print
for
one
sure.
can be more sort of unclear, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and as I was researching this feature, I couldn't really find where there's any specific drawing standard that dictates this. I think it's more of just a matter of convenience and a desire to make drawings that look as clean and as readable as possible.
So Shane asked a question, says, okay, so see a couple comments here. Dimension breaks make me happy. Love that update. One of my favorites. Great, but a great improvement to dimension breaks. So, well, a lot of exclamation points on that one. So definitely a delight.
Yeah, it's those delighters. Everybody looks at that and goes, "Yep, I needed that a long time ago. Thanks." And
yeah, there is so there's a question from Shane. Shane asks, would the break apply around notes?
I'm trying to recall from my testing. I want to say I tested some different use cases around that, and I can't remember for sure if it works around notes presently or if that's a coming soon. Tell you what, I'll check up on that and try to get an answer back in one of the user forums.
Yeah, or even, I guess, even in the comments. But yeah, that's an interesting question. Definitely something that we could test here.
Yeah.
So awesome. Yeah, that one, the chat lit up for that one. So that's great. Hopefully a sign of things to come. But
good.
What's another one of your favorites, Brad?
Yeah, well, folks, if you like that one, here's another really good one. This one has to do with geometric tolerance frames. Those of you who were around from the transition of SOLIDWORKS 2022 to 23, you saw us revamp the geometric tolerance frame, the way you enter tolerances. And it's a much more streamlined form, but there's one limitation that sort of fell out of that, and that is the tolerance range value could only be a number value. And what happened, we found out that there were certain use cases from, in fact, from a couple of different users. We found some specific user requested enhancements for, hey, here's a use case that is no longer supported. And one of them that you're seeing on screen here is if we wanted to use a letter variable value instead of a number for a tolerance. So this might be a case where you have a tolerance value that varies maybe by material type. So what we've done here is we just put in a letter value, and now we can call out in either a note or in a tolerance block or a table or something like that what those different letter variable values are. So we can now put any combination of numbers, letters, or symbols in that range field. And another interesting use case that was presented by a user was in the optics field, where their tolerance value is actually an angle that's reported in degree, minute, seconds.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so you got to be able to put those symbols mixed in with the numbers, and that's one thing that you couldn't do in this revamped tolerance frame. So that's now been expanded to where really anything you want to put in that field, letters, numbers, variables, whatever, you can just get a little bit more expanded usability out of that geometric tolerance frame. So again, pretty simple. I probably over-explained it.
I think one thing that struck me as interesting was you had mentioned back when we revamped the user interface for the sort of different frames for entering in GTOL information. I think that was back, I think you referenced it, I think it was back in 2022. And
I think so.
I just came across, it's so funny because I just came across a SolidWorks subreddit post that said, I'm upgrading from 2021, and what are the big things that I have to know about, or what are the big things I should care about, if I'm upgrading, like what should I be looking to try, basically. So there's a lot of responses, but that was one of them. That was definitely one of them in terms of that just being a lot easier. Because I remember when I first learned SolidWorks, like that, putting in GTOL information in the old interface was definitely cumbersome and, quite frankly, very intimidating. So it's like it just felt a bit hard to learn and to use. So this sort of expansion and capabilities is nice to see, and also a reminder that just a few years ago we made that pane a lot easier to use. So yeah, let's go with our one of our, I guess I don't want to say top three, but three of our favorites. Let's go to number 3 here.
Yeah, this one I really don't even need to narrate this one when we see this. This is magnetic lines for annotations.
Oh yeah.
But I will anyway.
It's like, I told you, I told you when, because we worked together, and you were showing me a bit of this demo. I remember in our little review feedback, I was like, the way it's demoed, you can almost use it as like a little vacuum. It's like a little
yeah.
It
just snaps up
the just snaps them in. Yeah. Just sucks them right in. So that is neat.
I remember demoing the magnetic lines for balloons. A lot of you will remember that was, I'm pretty sure it was SolidWorks 2012. And that was back in these days when I used to get out in front of customers at these live events, and it always was like you could audibly hear the inhales from the audience when they saw this magnetic lines for balloons, because it's just, again, it's one of those that you look at that and go, oh, I immediately know what to do with that. I can start using that right away, and it's going to just make everything faster and easier and make my drawings look better with less effort. And so what we've got now is the ability to add annotations to this. And this means, let's see if I can name them all off here. Notes, revision symbols, geometric tolerance symbols, surface finish symbols, weld symbols. I think that's all of them.
And I guess, I'm not sure if you said balloons.
Well, of course, balloons. Yeah, that we've always had.
Yeah, but that's awesome. Yeah, lots of, again, we're doing this virtually, so we don't hear the audible gas, but okay, that is
maybe some emojis.
No, okay, that is cool. 2012 sounds about right. Amazing. Top. So, wow, very cool, simple, and really useful. Really nice to add support for other annotation types for this. Great.
Yeah. Can we put
practical stuff?
Can we put Giphies in the YouTube chat? I don't know if that's permissible, but if you can, I would fully support it.
Well, I'm gonna turn the tables here. I want to give one of my favorites from the past few functional deliveries, the past few FDs of 2025, I'm going to go with auto-generate drawings. I wanted to give us a little bit more shine here. Brad, one of the big reasons is because you were the individual who dug really deeply into for this sort of new feature introduction cycle that we've had here for SOLIDWORKS 2026. You dug very deeply into this functionality. Was there anything that you wanted to share with the audience that maybe you wanted to reaffirm from earlier when Jesse and I were speaking about it, or just to add extra context, anything like that?
Yeah, you guys really covered this well, I thought, and this is certainly one of those features that it feels like it kind of snuck in under the radar, didn't it? That it showed up in 25X FD01, where those releases don't get quite as much fanfare as our major releases. And so one thing I wanted to do is just make sure that people know that this exists, that these capabilities already exist in 25, but also. I think from what we heard from Bruce and John is that there's no end in sight for their commitment to AI and expanding the AI capabilities within the software. So I think we can all look at what we can presently do with auto-generate drawings and just know that the sky's the limit on this, which is very nice.
I will say we have more drawings in the user experience section as well. I will deliver more drawings enhancements that you probably have not seen.
Oh, good. Yeah, because there's too many to list. A couple of things I will say about this. I did test it pretty extensively and updated the demos for it, but I tested this on a lot of different kinds of parts, sheet metal parts, weldments, machine parts, plastic parts. And just across the board, I would say it does a generally very good job at, like Jesse was saying, the repetitive type tasks, the things that just really deserve automation. You don't want to have to sit there and do that time after time after time, and you can just batch automate that. I dumped dozens of drawings in at one time and just let it kind of churn in the background, which is awesome that you can continue to work. It just runs as a separate process. So that is great. I think that's where folks are going to get probably the most utility out of auto-generate drawings is just dump this stuff off in the background, come back to it when it finishes up, and start doing the real meaningful part of detailing.
Very interesting. Well, cool. Brad, thank you so much for coming on here on SOLIDWORKS Live. It's always a treat. Thank you, man.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
All right, so I mentioned we'll have a little bit of drawings in the user experience section, which is the next section. But you think about SOLIDWORKS products overall, and some of what we heard from John and Bruce in R&D in the very beginning, and really overall. I mean, to be completely frank, I mean, if we think about what new features, new enhancements are doing, it's about increasing speed. It's about increasing ease of use, right? These are all this sort of buzzwords you like to hear around this time of year, practically speaking, right, for any software that you're using. But really, if you take those sorts of buzzwords and you distill them down, what you're really saying is you want increased, improved, however you say it, user experience, right? And some features and some enhancements do that more than others, right? So to go over some of these enhancements, I've asked Andrew Gross to join the show. Andrew, how are you?
Hey, I'm good. Good to see you, Sean. How you doing, man?
Yeah, man, I'm doing well. It's always a treat. You're always super excited to talk about this stuff. So I love on this episode. So I asked you, in honor of 30 years of SOLIDWORKS, right? 3-0, just 3 of your favorite UX or user experience style enhancements for SOLIDWORKS 2026, just to share with us today. And you and I can, just like we did with Brad, talk about those. So what's the first one you want to go over today?
Well, the first one is the ability to import models in the background. I mean, this is a big one.
Yeah.
It's super simple. I mean, like you can almost think of it very similar to the auto-generate drawings, right? So we have a new task pane where we can just kind of load up any sort of imported geometry, step files, IJs, what have you, build a queue, close the task pane, right? It'll crank away in the background, staying productive within SOLIDWORKS, and you even get this really nice little notification, when the models are done importing. Again, it doesn't take a long time to explain it, but I think anyone who has imported, a 700 megabyte step file just because they needed one little part out of it, and SOLIDWORKS is locked up for 10, 15 minutes sometimes, cranking through a huge step file, Well, now you can just stay productive, right? Just cranking away in the background, using more of the horsepower of your machine so that you can actually continue doing your job. I mean, it's a straight up productivity enhancement. It's awesome.
Yeah, we have coincidentally, we have an episode of Live Design on Halloween at the end of the month where Danutze Petrova Nikolova, she's a SolidWorks champion. She is a SolidWorks Champion of the Year winner. She'll actually be on talking about. She has some sort of colorful title for it that I can't remember off the top of my head, but how to survive working with step files or something like that. So this I'll have to mention to her like this for sure. Even if it's at that point, it will have to just be sort of a mention, right? Have to mention that as something to look forward to for sure, because this is a big one.
I can't wait to see that from Danute. She's amazing. And I mean, it's good timing because it is sometimes a nightmare scenario having to open up
So I'm
big
looking
step
at
files for Halloween.
For Halloween. So I look at no, I've been looking down the chat. So wow, a lot of emojis. I'm seeing some new emojis here, like I don't know, like my kids know how to do the heart emoji, like with their hands or whatever, the heart sign with their hands. I can't do it, but someone emoji did the celebration emoji. Awesome. This is
okay.
Wow. Okay. Cool. So
It sounds like we have people who have felt that pain of importing large step files and it's kind of waiting around, you know. So I think this one's huge. It's my favorite of 2026 for sure.
For sure. So let's get to one of your other favorites here.
Okay, so the next one are some new selection filters, and they're pretty awesome. So the first one, which works in assemblies, is filter components, right? So what does that really mean? So when you turn that filter on, anything you click within the graphics area, it's going to select that top level subassembly or top level component that's right underneath your mouse, right? So it just makes it really quick and easy to select what you want. You know, in the past, we could use, the D key using breadcrumbs would allow us to kind of filter through the levels of what we want to click on. This is just a really, really fast way to get there using filter components. The other new filter, which is you can see here, is filter features. Okay, so this one's pretty cool. So say you're in a part, and this one only works in parts. You click a fillet. Well, all of the other fillets that were part of that originating fillet feature will also highlight in the graphics area, right? So say you click, a face, it's going to highlight all the other faces that were part of that feature. Now, the benefit for a user, right, is that it's also highlighted in the feature manager design tree. So if we're like a really complex part, lots and lots of features, you're like, well, I want to edit this thing, but I don't know exactly which feature it was part of. So you click on whatever that is in the graphics area, it highlights, and you can edit, right? It's also great if, say, you're working on a part that you didn't create. So you don't have to, rolling up your part from the bottom and just trying to find, well, where was that created? Which of these extrusion 724, right? You can just kind of click it and say, oh, there it is. So I really like this one.
That is cool. Yeah, it's also a great demonstration of the reality that filters can actually be useful and not always just something that you've accidentally turned on with a keyboard shortcut.
Yeah, it's like, oh, I accidentally hit F5. What is this thing? I can't get rid of it. Yes, that's a good point.
And that toolbar, right? That toolbar, because we have, especially with the Maker version, we have so many different levels of experience in terms of just using SolidWorks, SolidWorks design application overall. Some people just started using it or just got access to it. So that filter toolbar, you can turn on that toolbar for filters, and then you'd be able to see all the different options, right?
Yes, absolutely. Great point, Sean. So hitting F5 on your keyboard will bring that toolbar present, and then you can, click which filter you want. Now, another kind of for a new SolidWorks user, if you see with your mouse, if there's a little purple filter icon down and to the right of your mouse, that means you have a filter turned on. You may not even know it. And so that can really affect what you're clicking in the graphics area. So yeah, filters are great when they're used properly.
There are a lot of comments here. So the filter feature is really nice. So often I click on a face, then try to find where the heck it exists in my tree, or knowing
that is the exact.
Yeah,
that is the exact use case. Totally. Yeah.
Cool.
Sorry, Sean.
No. That's I was about to say the same thing. And then just the mind blown emoji. Somebody pounds fist on table. I insist on using my filters accidentally. Okay. Oh man, I love the chat. So cool.
That's
So that's
great. That's
yeah,
awesome.
so that's two. I believe we got to two so far. So what's our
Yes.
third of three?
So the third one are a couple new selection tools. Okay, so the first one is selecting bodies by size. Okay, what does this mean, right? So say you're in a part that has a bunch of bodies, right? Say hundreds of bodies. Like in this case, this remote control unit has like hundreds of different bodies in this part. Well, what you can do is there's a little slider where you can progressively select parts by size, right? And why would you want to do that? Well, say you have, like in this case, this remote control unit is part of a larger subassembly, but this is like a super complicated performance hog of a part because it's got all these parts and faces and things. So maybe you'd want to create a configuration where you've deleted all of these, pieces of hardware that have like modeled threads and all this other stuff that can draw performance down, right? So that's a really, really cool enhancement, the little slider for selecting parts by size. Now, the second new selection that we have, the new selection tool, is this selecting parts by volume. Now, if you've been in the SOLIDWORKS community for a while and you've kept up with what's new over the years, you've seen for a number of years we've been able to do this in assemblies, right? You create you build like a bounding box or a volume within the graphics area, and whatever's inside of it is selected. And you can see here, this is you just sketching a square or something within right in the graphics area, and then you can kind of push and pull it until you've captured the parts you want to. In this case, the bodies that you want to. So I think this one's pretty neat too.
That seems really potentially useful as well for you're mentioning neutral files earlier in terms of background importing. That this happens a lot, right? Where you just have like tons of based on the structure that comes in. You have tons of bodies that would realistically, if you had modeled it from the start in SolidWorks, maybe you would have a part structure, but you'd have tons of bodies and tons of stuff you probably don't even want. It's just bogging down the machine because there's, like you said, there's so many faces and edges that the graphics card has to consider anytime you do anything. It's just like, let's get rid of it. So yeah, that's huge.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, these two new selection tools, I think, are so useful for exactly what you're talking about, Sean. You're importing a step file, like we talked about it. Just a big step file. A lot of times you bring in a step file and you're like, oh my gosh, this thing is massive. And they've modeled every single thread on every single fastener. Like, that's too much. Let's just, use this, remove some of these bodies so I get a little bit more performance back.
These are really cool. Yeah, keep letting us know in the chat. I see a lot of people gasp, whoa, the shocked emoji where it's like someone just like this. See that?
That one. Oh, just the circle though. Yeah, that one's good. That's a good one. Yeah, that's a strong emotion.
It is. It's a seemingly strong emotion, especially when you hit it 3 times, as this person did. Very strong.
Yes. No, I mean, I feel like, it was so fun working on these enhancements in the what's new. That I just feel I thought they were all so great. I loved working on these.
Thank you guys for just once again watching, but also commenting. Like, this is making it so fun. I think like having this extra layer of the chat and people just remarking and asking questions and reacting and your humor. So just interject for a moment. I mean, thank you. I wanted to mention one of my favorites from the 2025 release that came out once again after that first GA, General Availability FD0 release. This one came out in FD02, so this enhancement. So hide show expressions. I teased that I will have a drawing enhancement for us, UX-wise, user experience-wise. This one was a big one. I remember seeing it, and this is one that for all of you who are talking about drawings and managing annotations and notes, you will know exactly what this helps you solve right away as soon as you realize it. It's a toggle. It's basically a toggle, and what it does is it toggles the stated note. This sort of appears as static text note, and it will show you if there is a text expression. In other words, it will show you if it is a linked note. And not only will it show you whether it is a linked note or not, it will show you the linkage in play. So we know linked notes are very popular in title blocks especially, but not just title blocks, elsewhere. This example does a really good job of showing how this can be useful when you're working with a drawing with a title block that might not have been yours. Maybe you didn't make it, or maybe you created it 3 years ago. Or maybe it's a version of, a sheet format, this sort of rogue version that got edited and saved with the drawing. And you're like, why is this property not showing up the way it should? How is it linked? So there's like 5 use cases right off the top of my head that like I know come up because I've run into them that this would help you with. You just hit that toggle and you could assign it to a mouse gesture if you're doing hardcore, sheet format work, title block work temporarily if you want. So yeah, there's a lot of ways to access it, but this was new as of 2025 FDO2. So it came out a few months ago. If you have FDO2, FDO3, or of course, if you're installing 2026, it'll just be there. So let us know in the chat what you think about that one.
I mean, this is just a straight up usability enhancement, right? I mean, like it's so great, right? I mean, before you had to kind of rely on the tooltip, isn't that right?
Yes, you had to. Yeah, so yeah, in that situation, you had to, and many of those situations, you would have to edit the sheet format so that would make the note sort of readily accessible for actually like hovering over, and then you would hover over it, and then you would see.
Right, you'd hover over. Yes, you'd hover over it and have to see the tooltip. Yeah,
so you'd have to know all that, and it was just trial and error, and it was just absolutely maddening.
Totally.
So, I see nice simple way. I'm reading the chat. Nice simple way to double check the map props and annotations. Oh, that kind of expression. Yeah, it's the nerdy kind of expression. I see a lot of people commenting here. Thank you guys so much. Awesome. Well, Andrew, thank you so much for sharing these enhancements. Thanks you for partaking in this awesome chat with me today. And yeah, just thanks for all your work on this What's New project, man. I really appreciate it.
Well, thanks so much for having me, Sean. This is always fun to be on your show. Thanks, man.
For sure. All right, so we got user experience, and you think about SolidWorks, and you think about parts, assemblies, drawings, a lot user experience. We've been focusing a lot on the sort of single user experience, right? That makes sense. It all starts as a single user experience, but it expands beyond that at some point. You're working with coworkers in your design department or manufacturing or your vendors or customers. You get to the point where things become pretty collaborative, right? And sometimes many of us are using SolidWorks PDM to do a lot of that collaboration, especially internally, where we're managing our data and our workflows as it relates to the products that we inevitably create. Some of us are using 3D Experience with cloud services to do much of the same, but in a cloud-oriented way. So to discuss all these aspects with 3 of his favorite features specific to the 2026 release here of SolidWorks, I am welcoming on Gurpreet Singh. Gurpreet, how are you?
I'm doing well, Sean. And in fact, I was relating how difficult it was to know which properties map to your nodes, and you have to actually struggle to get it figure out in the last enhancement. Yeah, and
Yeah,
in fact,
not great.
Yeah. Thank you for setting up the stage because in this section, I probably would be requiring more than one user to explain all the enhancements, all 3 enhancements. So probably we'll be using few personas like Eric Engineer, Megan Manager, and Mitch Manufacturing. So
I'm sure many of us are a Megan manager or an Eric engineer in our day job. So we'll be clear on what the role is right as we go. But no, that's a good call out. So Gurpreet, once again, I wanted to invite you on. So there are different ways that our customers, you guys out there watching today, of course, are managing their workflows and their product maturity states and just making sure that files aren't overwritten, basic stuff like that. Between colleagues. So between PDM and collaboration features here on 3D Experience, I wanted to have you on to discuss some of our favorites that have come out through the 2026 release here of the overall SolidWorks 2026 sort of portfolio update. So yeah, let's start. Let's get underway. What's one of your favorite out of that bunch?
Yeah. Before I jump on to my first favorite one, it was really difficult to figure out top 3 because there are a lot of enhancements done in PDM and collaboration area. So anyways, we'll jump to my first favorite enhancement, which is transfer ownership. So in this workflow, Eric Engineer wants to implement some design changes for a new product launch. So where he is going to make some modifications to the wall mount. And after making the changes, he's going to save the data locally. So we are in a situation where Eric has either left the organization or we end up in a situation where we have a user machine crashed. And we, in such situations, we have some data which is locally saved, but it's not checked in into PDM. And traditionally, we lose that data. So what's new in 2026 is the ownership transfer. So wherein a manager can transfer the ownership of Eric's checked out assemblies just using the right click menu. And now with this, this admin user or the manager will have access to that checked out data, and then they can proceed further with the normal you can say a business process. So what happens in the background? The background synchronization between the vault views enable the users to maintain the archive server will maintain a regular backup of local cache, which allows the ownership transfer to retrieve the backup and apply the incremental changes. And I believe this is one of the most significant enhancement in the recent releases. So wherein we were in a situation where we end up in losing the data, but now that data can be retrieved and can be then used.
Yeah, there was a point in my career where I did PDM support and implementations, and yeah, this was never really a great discussion to have because obviously it's not. Hopefully it isn't an everyday occurrence, but when it does come up, it can really suck. So yeah, this ability to retrieve local version or local iteration, even if the individual has, once again, like you said, left the company, or if there was a machine crash. And I would say, people agree. Love this wow. Love this wow is a comment I see in the chat. So I also see change ownership is kind of a big deal. Game changer, all caps. So that is a testament to this. So a question here, Gurpreet, and we'll see if we can answer this one here. Let's see, if we have access to the other local cache, are we able to transfer the local cache files as well?
Okay, so at the moment, any changes done to the existing data which is there in the PDM, we can all the incremental changes will be like transferred when we do the ownership transfer. But yes, probably if there are any private state files, those are not checked into the PDM. I believe it will be there in the future. Yeah.
Yeah, this is a big feature. This is a big enhancement. There's a clarifying question here. When that ownership changes, do the local changes come with it? And
yeah.
Okay, so that's really what we're talking about here, right? Yeah. Awesome. Thanks for the clarifying questions, everyone. Thanks for the further questions. Yeah, this is big. Admins will love this. I know a lot of admins are in the chat right now, and this is a big one. So let's move on to one of your other top threes.
Yeah. So my next favorite is improved folder access rights.
Okay.
So wherein, if you see, we have this user Mitch manufacturing. So when he logs into PDM, he doesn't have a visual navigation to a lower level subfolder. So with 2026 PDM, what we can do is we can give a lower level folder access permission, which is required for Mitch manufacturing to use the assets or the data. However, restricting all the hierarchical, you can say, permissions. So wherein even if Mitch manufacturing doesn't have access to the parent folders, and he has access to the lower level subfolders, still he will be able to see the visual navigation. So, however, this workflow was possible before 2026, but in those cases, you need to give the exact address or exact you can say a folder location to the user. But with 2026, now you have a visual navigation. So from each, you can say, starting from the root folder to the lower level subfolder, you will be able to see, and Mitch manufacturing will be able to navigate to that lower level subfolder. However, he won't be able to see any content of the parent level folders. So which is a big deal. And I believe if you are implementing PDM in a manufacturing workflow, so wherein the manufacturing people only require access to a folder where you have your release drawing PDFs, and they have the complete visual navigation, but they will not be able to see any other content of the parent folders. Yeah. So I would say it enables the targeted access without exposing the parent folder content. Yeah.
That's huge in itself. And as you said, progressively getting more functional. Like you mentioned, maybe perhaps it was possible, but now this is obviously through just a simple demo of clicking through folders that appear, pretty empty. But that's the thing; you're not getting access to things that you don't necessarily need or shouldn't have access to. But it also makes it, once again, you're not having to give someone a direct path, and those things get lost. It's very easy to kind of lose track of those things. So it's much more functional, I think, for both the admin in this case, but also for the sort of fictitious user we're using in this case, the niche manufacturing style user. Could be anyone, right? That's the user we're demoing here, or this type of user, right? As you said. So that's great. No, awesome. Another great, I would say, enhancement for both admins and specific styles of end users alike. So that's two for PDM. We're gonna get the 3D experience here in a second.
Yeah. Probably we'll go with one of the collaboration enhancement in 3D experience, which is object referencing in 3D Swim. So with 2026, 3D Swim communities are a much more powerful tool for collaborating with your colleagues. So now you can extend that collaboration to include objects like projects, issues, bookmarks, documents, and so on. So it makes it easier for everyone to have access to all the information at one place. So however, you need a project planner license to access the project inside communities. But yes, it is now possible to have everything available in communities. So I would say now communities is not only just a mere collaboration tools where you can chat or do a video call, but it's much more than that. So all your engineering information is now accessible through 3D Swim.
This is a big enhancement, I would say, for a number of reasons. There are a number of users now, a number of companies that are using what we call cloud services. Companies that have SolidWorks design and are just taking advantage of it, right? To do a variety of things, whether it's managing maturity states, workflows. It could even just be used for interdepartmental communication, right? Using 3D Swim, project management. You can use it for that as well. So this is another reason, just try it. You have it, and this makes it a lot more accessible to me, not for any reason that is SolidWorks specific or 3D Experience specific or really anything software specific here, but more so just to do with using a new tool. Because as you've said, if you have everything cleanly in one space, it's a lot easier to see not only the things you can leverage, but to get the aspects that you need when you need them. So that's very important. It just kind of lessens or smooths out that learning curve, I think. So yeah, just another reason to give it a go. But this is a really cool enhancement. Let us know in the chat what you think here.
Yeah.
Agree,
Sean. Yeah.
So this is a big one. This is one where we're talking about interpersonal, sort of interdepartmental collaboration. I'm going to again turn the tables and give you one of my favorites that came out as of 2025 FDO3. And that is one of the first installments that we are seeing of Aura. So if we could take a look at that one. So we heard way back, 3D Experience World 2025, this past February in 2025, we saw a few future-looking demos of this sort of virtual companion, and they're pretty impressive, right? These demonstrations of what we might be seeing in the future, where we're chatting with this virtual companion to assist us in assembly operations, in sort of mechanism validation operations, in part modeling operations. You can see this individual taking a picture of, I believe, a miter saw handle, and then from that picture having the virtual companion render an actual 3D model version of that, then inserting it in the appropriate spot, and then also running potentially a simulation. So these things in the future might very well be things that could be possible, right? So this idea of virtual companions, we've seen future looking demonstrations from 3D Experience World just a number of months ago. Surely we'll see more at 3D Experience World coming up in February 2026. Buy those tickets, people. Got to get there. But I did want to show you Aura. We released a version of this back in 2025 for FD03, and we kind of timed the SolidWorks enhancements and the 3D Experience enhancements on the same sort of schedule. What we're seeing here, actually, kind of going along with what you mentioned, Gurpreet, in terms of leveraging 3D Swim. Aura is capable of a number of different things. One thing that it's capable of right now within 3D Swim is you can generate summaries. So picture you're sharing a spec sheet within a given 3D Swim community with your colleagues, right? You can have it generate a summary of a spec sheet to give you maybe more of a readable version of that. Another example that we just showed was actually using it. If we scrub to the end of the vignette here, we also showed an example of accessing it within SolidWorks. So you can see within the vignette that the user, in that case, asks how to save save a SolidWorks file to a previous version. Right within the SolidWorks window. It's going to show up in just a second here on the screen, so just look out for that. But yeah, you can access it without having to leave SolidWorks. You can ask it training questions. And yeah, and also it's pretty funny to me that probably many of you, it might be your first time knowing that you can save a file set, an assembly, a drawing, and its associated components back to a previous major release version, up to 2 major releases backwards. But Aura has that information here, as we can see in the demo. So yeah, more to come in terms of virtual companions and what it can do for us. But the promise is starting to show itself is really what I wanted to convey here. And we saw that beginning in FD03, or at least that came out just a few months ago.
Yeah, I believe, Sean, it's a big one because this lays the foundation stone of how SolidWorks users can implement AI within the SolidWorks interface and how they can leverage the power of LLM and AI to their benefit. I think there are a lot more to come in future, and we are pretty hopeful. And I'm personally pretty excited about it.
Awesome. Well, Gurpreet, thank you so much for jumping on. I love talking PDM and just collaboration in general with you. And I'm sure next time I'll see you, of course, we'll see each other virtually on team meetings, but probably in person at 3D Experience World, sharing some more of your knowledge. So we're all looking forward to it. Thanks, man.
Sure, Sean. Yeah. Bye.
Okay, so we got some PDM, some collaboration. I think we talked about explaining, what SolidWorks is. With Bruce and John at parties, what you just sort of point to an object, and as Bruce said, sometimes even the parts you can't see, those are the ones that are designed in SolidWorks that sort of make up our world. But you point to a chair, a table, a machine, right? Well, when I explain what simulation is, that's probably the easiest part in some ways to explain, like why a certain product exists, right? If a product is not built to sustain its intended use case, then there is surely a problem. And so simulation, SolidWorks Plastics, SolidWorks Flow Simulation, and other tools, they're meant to assist us with that. So to come on here and talk to us about what's new in 2026 when it comes to simulation, I've asked my friend Ronnie Mukherjee to join us to share his knowledge with us. What's going on, Ronnie? You're on mute, buddy.
All right. Thank you for having me over here, Sean. Yeah, I'm not sure how I got muted there, but it's always exciting when we're doing these projects, man. And thank you for giving me the opportunity to be here and chat with you a little bit about simulation.
Yeah, man, it's one of my favorites. I think from that standpoint, from many standpoints really, but from that standpoint of, it can seem like a super complex topic, lots of theory in terms of how we apply it, how we define our studies, why it applies to the real world. So it's as you guys all full well know, watching this, like it's a huge discipline, but we also know we have lots of users of SolidWorks simulation out there that are probably very curious about what's new as of 2026. So I asked you very similarly just to come with 3 of your favorites from the 2026 release. So what's one of the enhancements you have for us today?
Yeah, definitely, man. But before I even jump into it, finding what the top 3 were was actually quite challenging. It's like asking me whether I like a Neapolitan style, nice burrata pizza, or like a burgers and fries. I like them all, man. It was really, really tough for me to pick. And the one thing you mentioned, Sean, folks think simulation is complex, but that's what we are here for. Like, to be honest, like, you can design anything in CAD, but unless and until we know it's going to work in real world, that design is just design in CAD, right? So simulation is very important. And to be honest, it's not actually as complex as people think it is, right? That's where we want to make it a little bit easier for designers and engineers to run these analysis to make sure their products are right. So I won't waste too much of the time because I can talk about it for the rest of my
It's your favorite.
life, and be excited about it. So, top three, like I said, it's really tough to pick the top three, but I did pick three enhancements based on what I ran into in the more recent years, and I was hoping it's going to jump onto as an enhancement. And here they are. So we're going to start with that distributed remote load on shell edges. That was a really good enhancement, man. And the reason behind it is I work a lot with shells, and anytime I'm running these analysis, and if it's a shell, I couldn't really use the edge of the shell to set up a remote load mask. But now in 2026, if I define a shell, I have the ability to directly add that load onto the shell edge itself. And remote loads are great. It's if you want to get rid of a component that's not going to be a part of this analysis, but you want to be able to incorporate its effects, great tool to use. And now that I can actually put it right on the edge means I can get a little bit more accurate results. Back in the day, I would have to maybe add a sketch or do something like that to have that going, but now I can just use it. So fantastic enhancement in my opinion.
Yeah, there were a few. I mean, you and I talked throughout the release cycle. There were a few remote load based enhancements that I saw. This one is really neat. I mean, and I think you explained it super well in terms of being able to exclude certain bodies or certain parts or components from a study. And really, maybe its only function was to actually distribute the load,
Yeah.
which is interesting. So yeah, that's a great one. Let us know in the chat if you're using SOLIDWORKS simulation. Maybe this is your first exposure to it. And/or if you could see yourself using this feature. So, Ronnie, what else you got for us?
Yeah, man. So there's another one that I kind of had a little bit of tough time. I think a few months ago, where I was working with a very large assembly, and some of the components were missing some materials, right? So this new enhancement has to do with the of course the user experience enhancement. It might seem really small, but let's say you're working with 500 components and you've got a material missing in a couple of those, or the mesh is not working right in a few of those components. In the past, you would have to literally go through the tree and kind of take a look at where this material is. Sure, so simulation used to pop up some errors, but these errors were about the boundary condition and all that stuff, but never for mesh or the material if it's missing a material. And you'll have to search through the whole tree and go find that. And like I said, if you're working with a lot of components, that can be really tedious. And now what you can do is it's going to pop up the error message and it's going to tell you exactly what that model number is or the part number is. And you can use as a pro tip, you can actually use that and go to the filter, type in that name, and it's going to take you exactly to where that body is in your feature tree. So saves you a lot of time rather than digging through the entire tree. So again, it's a small one, but to be honest, if you're working with a lot of components, it's a good one.
That is huge. Yeah. I mean, because previously, yeah, in terms of finding the culprit, I guess you would say in that case, yeah, you might have to have a macro or something if that could help possibly.
Yeah.
But most people aren't using macro or writing macros. A lot of people do, but most people aren't. We all know that. So this could definitely speed up that process. So this could have been a user experience. This is a great usability enhancement for simulation here.
Yes, definitely. I saves a lot of time for me and headache going through the tree.
For sure. Yeah. So I think my enhancement that I'll go through in just a moment in the SOLIDWORKS simulation sphere will sort of be similar in terms of it being a good usability enhancement, but not to take away from what we have here. What's your third favorite here?
Oh, I know, man. This was I have to say this might be my favorite one. But we'll say it's my third favorite because they're all my favorites. Man, so I think earlier this year, around March, I was working on an analysis on this. So it was sort of a system that it's a trailer that you plugged behind a Jeep or your truck and you're dragging it around, And this trailer had a lot of pins, and I was running a random vibration study on this. I wanted to see, like, when you're actually going over the road with bumps and stuff, how does this whole assembly behave? And this trailer had a lot of different pins, so I had to deal with all of them. Like, that's either I'm removing all of them and just bonding everything together, so it's not really as accurate, but does the job. But I was like, I wish there were pin connectors in random vibration. This was again in March, like, earlier this year. And guess what? What's new 2026? Now we have pin connectors in random vibration. And I was like, why was it not there earlier? Why did I waste so much time? So now we can run. So if you are running a random vibration study, Sean, you have the ability to eliminate all those pins hardware and actually use pin connectors in instead. And once you have those pin connectors, like, you can take a look at all the different types of, post processing, like, shear, axial bending, torque. And you can also plot your graph, plot all this data on a logarithmic scale. And I think this video would be showing, like, you've got a little, you can find where the critical resonance is happening. And, like, so it gives you good insight on, okay, I'm running a random vibration on this. Here's a critical response that needs to be studied a little bit more. And this type of insight is what's most important about simulation and what helps you make products that are going to last a lot longer and, kind of find some of these issues that might pop up that we won't know until later. So I would say a really good enhancement when it comes to random vibration is to be able to do these pin connectors now without having to have pins there.
Awesome. Well, yeah, I see some comments in the chat, guys. Keep them coming. Keep them coming with questions. I know Ronnie will be in the chat as well if you have any questions you're thinking about asking or typing up right now. But yeah, I want to get to one of my favorites from the release, and that is some enhancements to post-processing when it comes to plastics. You focus a lot on structural. I'm going to go plastics. So this was one that obviously demos really well, but we know with injection molding, if there are short shots, at times, of course, there are areas that are unfilled. So we have these unfilled masses, right? Unfilled volumes, rather. And it can be hard, given certain models, to exactly see sort of topographically across the model where those exist. Some cases are easier, some cases not. What we've done is we've made it a lot easier by color coding them, and sort of you can see in sort of like jagged, sort of meshy way where the unfilled volumes exist. And you can see in this demo we made named views to further review those areas and get back to them a little bit easier. And that's how we're doing that kind of smooth zooming in and out of the unfilled volumes. So we make it a lot easier. And you can see the study advisor also gives you a variety of different sort of facets of why this may have occurred, given your study setup and what it means for your design. So SolidWorks Plastics is a separate module. Many of you know that, many of you might not. Many of you might be learning of the fact that we have something called SolidWorks Plastics that allows you to run injection mold simulations for the first time. If so, welcome. But this was one of my favorite enhancements because again, it's on the end of usability, and you can also see like not only the volume, so it shows you clearly the unfilled volume within the simulation results, but it also tells you the percentage of the overall volume that remains unfilled given the running of the study. So that's another area you can see numerically that percentage. I think it's like it's a little tiny on my screen, but it's like 28% or so, given the study that was done, that would remain unfilled, given the setup. So
No, this is definitely a very nice pick, Sean. I'm glad you picked this one. I'm glad you're talking about plastics as well. For the folks that don't know that we have a plastics tool, we have a plastics injection molding tool. Whether you're a designer, mold maker, you can actually run these fill, pack, and cool analysis. And without even having to make a mold, which are expensive, you can pre-run these parts, and make sure everything is okay. You're not getting short shots like you see over there. And and then you don't have to do any changes on your mold, and your parts are going to be great right from the start. And this enhancement, Shawl, I do want to mention, like, we were able to do short shots in the past, but there was no really nice way of showing, like, where the short shot is. And now with this enhancement, it's right up there at the unfilled one. And yeah, maybe we do a little bit color changes over there as well to highlight it a little bit more. But great enhancement if you're working with plastic components.
if you're curious, those of you watching at home, we have a full simulation video, we have a full PDM video, a full collaboration video. Basically, every area of the software we've discussed, we more extensively go through what's new in dedicated capacities. So yeah, if you go to solidworks.com/what's new, all those videos in a self-serve capacity are all right there, but how to give plastics some love. Even like flow simulation, we didn't get that today, but you'll see some information on flow simulation available at that page, all the same. But Ronnie, thank you so much. It's always a pleasure to have you on to talk simulation, to talk, quite frankly, anything. But I'm so appreciative that you were able to come on today. Thank you.
Pleasure's all mine, mate. Thank you for having me. Cheers.
Cheers. Okay, so we are at the ECAD and routing. So SOLIDWORKS electrical and SOLIDWORKS routing level enhancements. So I remember I was talking to, I think it was actually Bruce Holloway fairly recently, and he was saying that, you know, back 30 years ago when we first had that first version of SOLIDWORKS, those first few versions. If you look at some of the products today, the challenges, the needs, the demands, there's a lot more electromechanical today than maybe we had 30 years ago. So things have changed, and that has made it increasingly important to be able to document your electrical designs in both 2D and 3D. So to join us to talk about what's new in those specific areas is my friend Charles Mayu. How's it going, Charles?
Doing great, thanks. You know, thinking about 30 years, I go back to when I first started using SolidWorks, which was 2000, so 25 years ago.
Wow.
SolidWorks 98 plus. At that point in time, we didn't have any electrical stuff. And I was using 2D CAD tools to do my electrical stuff. And I'm like, I could do all my SolidWorks designs. I could do all my mechanical stuff. Why can't I do my electrical stuff? So, you know,
Yeah, man. I remember as you probably do. I remember when routing came out, and that was a big deal. That was a big change. But
Yeah.
here you are. Like, yeah, I mean, you know full well you're an electrical specialist here, and
Yep.
you're this is your first. By the way, welcome to this
Yeah.
episode. It's the first time doing a What's New episode. So
Yeah,
yeah.
I'm a greenhorn here, so hopefully I can keep up with everyone else, you know, and show some value for you guys, and you know, show my excitement for what we've done in routing and what we've done in SolidWorks Electrical for you guys this year.
I love it. So I didn't spare you. I asked you all the same. You know, come with 3 of your favorite electrical SolidWorks electrical / SolidWorks routing enhancements. 3 favorites, and I have one of my own that we'll share. But yeah, let's get to it, man. What's one of your favorites?
So one of my favorites this year is our improvements for our connector table usability. So when you go ahead and flatten out your SolidWorks routing assemblies, right, especially for our electrical people, those that aren't using SolidWorks Electrical, but they're maybe using another tool to get their from-to lists, we have some additional properties that can be displayed in the connector tables. And if you guys don't remember from previous years, we also have the mass update for those properties, you know, connector tables, right? So as you modify one, add those variables and properties to those tables, it can update and the rest of those, and then you can save those out as standardized stuff. But you can see we've got additional information in there for, you know, connections to, connections from, the actual connections pins, signals, all that stuff's been added into those connection tables now.
There have been a few. I mean, speaking of routing and enhancements to within functional deliveries, or as you guys might know them, service packs. Routing's definitely been an area that's got a ton of new enhancements. We'll talk about one in electrical later, solid electrical, but that's definitely one where, from a usability perspective, it's gotten a lot of love. Few FDs.
Yeah, it has definitely. All right. So it's been a lot of focus on electrical, and you know, coming up on my second one here is something for our pipe and tube people, right? You know, kind of jumping over to the other side of the routing spectrum. You know, for those that are doing more industrial processing and you know, that type of things. Coming up.
So once the coverings.
Right? Yeah, so we've got some improvements for coverings for specifically for pipe and tubes, right? We've always been able to do coverings for electrical, for our harnesses and stuff like that. But when we get to our pipes and tubes, now we have the ability to have favorites, right? So a lot of times when we're doing pipes and tubes, we're having a repeat set of coverings that have stuff defined for it. And you can see in the video there too, we can even apply material properties and get the appearances from those material properties to show up on those coverings, right? So in this particular case, you know, doing abrasion resistance for the hydraulic hoses, right? Same things can be done for piping and industrial processing, right? If we have to have different layers of, you know, insulation and then, you know, UV protection for that type of stuff, you can create those add them and save them as favorites so you can reuse them over and over again. Gives you that great visual appearance that you need for marketing videos in this particular case, or for documenting what you actually need to produce, right?
Yeah, this is reminiscent. I don't know if it was FDO2 or FDO3, but the inclusion of that wire search bar inside of the property manager to be able to
Yep.
search through the different, basically any sort of text or numeric based property,
Yeah.
collection of wires. Like having a favorite for coverings in this way that is encompassing of all those different facets that you mentioned, I think is pretty huge.
Yeah, so it's just like another one of those delighters that makes your life a little bit easier when you're doing repeated stuff over and over again, especially in a assembly like this where you've got tons of hoses that you got to add the multiple coverings to, right? So
And let us know. I mean, in the chat, let us know if you're using SolidWorks Electrical, if you're using routing for piping, tubing, wiring, cabling. Let us know. I see some emojis here, some nice emojis in reaction. I see someone saying great news, so that's awesome. So it's great to hear from you guys here in the chat. So yeah, Charles, let's get to your. I keep saying your third favorite, but another one of your top three.
one of my top three.
Top three.
So we had two from just standard SolidWorks routing, right? Which everyone using premium has. Now my last one here is specific to those that are using SolidWorks Electrical 3D, right? So this gives us the ability to route selected wires from our schematic, right? So it gives us the ability to granularly say, hey, I want to route this wire or these two wires, these three wires, not just a wire style, not just a specific component, but actual individual wires. It's great for the checking fit and function. In this particular case, like if we wanted to route the wires, make sure they fit through a specific hole, that type of stuff. Another use case I've recently ran into is in a more industrial control cabinet, right? You might have to route specific wires through another component, like maybe you have a current sensoring relay or something like that, and you got to route your wires through your current sensor. Gives us the ability to route those specific wires, turn off that route path, turn on the other route path, and then route the rest of the wires. It gives you that granular control. Some great use cases on that type of stuff.
Awesome. Cool. See someone shouting out harnessing. Awesome. Checking it on the chat. But yeah, this is great, man. I'm so happy to be able to feature these. And I mentioned I had one of my own that you and I actually discussed. We did discuss this one before, but I wanted to shout this out. So assigning accessory parts, and so I'll explain a little bit about what that is. So this one came out back in 2025, FDO1. So it was not in the What's New SolidWorks 2025 episode. It came out in FDO1. So you can assign, or as we said just now, you can associate parts like think pins or seals, sockets, what else, like plugs. And you can assign those or associate those to specific circuits or specific terminals now as of FDO1. So if you're using 2025, if you've upgraded to at least FDO1 or SP1, you have this capability. So I think you were saying one of the big motivations of this, and this was a big sort of customer-driven enhancement, right, was it gives you that ability to have just more specific, better documented manufacturing definition and information, right?
Yeah, so it's better documentation, getting that complete virtual twin, right? Getting that stuff information available for you, getting it better documentation, but it's also reduction in tasks that we have to do. In previous releases for SolidWorks Electrical, we could associate wire terminations, but but those terminations didn't carry manufacturer's parts with them. So you'd have to still create deal with your bill of material. You still have to add those parts to your component. Well, now you add those parts to the component, and at that same time, you can say, okay, this part is associated with this individual circuit. So if you're doing, in this particular case, we're showing as a harness. So we're going down to the individual pin of the connector and saying, this pin is used with this connector. If we've got seals, we're going to put seals on them. If we've got, whatever it needs to be to associate with that. But if you're doing like a fuse disconnect and you need to specify which size fuse to put in that fuse disconnect, you can specify that. Or if you've got a multi-fuse fuse block, say it's like an automotive fuse block, and you got to specify the different value of fuses based off which circuit is in that fuse block. You can do that while you're building your design, right? So you can define that information. You can pull all of the associated parts into reports. You can put them on connection labels like I show here in the video, but it's just a better documentation, gives the user ability to define that stuff while they're doing their design and get their bill of materials, right? That's one of the great things that SOLIDWORKS Electrical does, is our automated reports or automated connection labels, all that type of stuff just helps speed up that user's process of doing the design.
Yeah, I had to take away my autonomy when I heard how excited you were to go over this one. So I was just like, all right, Charles, you pick.
Yeah.
That's it's always, I mean, you and I know we agree on this. Whenever enhancement is customer driven, there's something special about that, obviously. Like, so if this is what's driving it, then it's like I feel so confident in being able to deliver this news to you all today. It's like that's huge. So
yeah, like we were so disappointed that it didn't make 25, but we're like, oh, it's going to be an FDO one.
It'll
Like,
be there
yes,
eventually.
it's going to be there. It's going to be there, right? So there's been electrical's been a huge focus. There's been a lot of enhancements to electrical the last few years. A lot of enhancement on the routing side the last few years, and it's continuing being developed and pushed by our customers. Like last year in the world 25 world top 10 list, electrical was like the second or third highest product in that list, and we're trying to get that again. So if there are any of my electrical people out there, hit up that what's new top 10 list for world for 26, put some electrical enhancements in there. We are listening to it. We are using those for our development.
Awesome. Yeah, I see Joe Lance in the chat. What's up, Joe? Joe says electrical has come a long way. See Todd Blackshear, Lalib 3D. Excuse my mispronunciation if I have it there, but yeah, I see a lot of the chat's very active still. Thank you, Charles, so much for coming on to really, I guess your first ever, right? Your first ever What's New episode. Hopefully it is not your last, but you did a great job. Thank you so much, man.
Thank you for having me. I enjoyed it. I hope you all got some great enhancement information out of this episode for everyone.
Sure thing, man.
Yep.
All right. So we have reached the end of the episode today, but it is not the end of our time together. We talked about delivery day. We talked about solidworks.com/what's new. And that brings me to one of my final points here, which is that I have to confess, we just haven't gotten to a great bulk of what's new in SolidWorks 2026. Like there is a lot more to potentially get into. I think we're headed for a fire drill here, so I'll speed it up. So today's episode, again, we only went through a fraction of what's new. You can get more information at solidworks.com/what's new. You'll see videos for SolidWorks design, for simulation, for ECAD, PDM, collaboration, for manufacturing, which we didn't really touch on much today, but you can get that video there as well. So many different videos catered to specific disciplines within 2026. Also, of course, look out for Delivery Day. Delivery Day for FDO1, FDO2, FDO3, that's live from 2025. We will continue for 2026. So keep that in your minds there. And then Slug Me 10. So it's a virtual design extravaganza that's coming up next month. Some of our best minds, our best team members, our community collaborators come together for an awesome build and an awesome cause. Once again, that live stream is next month. Subscribe and set a reminder. And of course, I'd be remiss to not say this. If you want to meet other designers and engineers, you want to take part in hands-on training, you want instructor-led training on basically any SOLIDWORKS topic you can imagine, head to 3D Experience World. It's coming up. Your time is now. Go to 3dexperienceworld.com and book your ticket. Book your ticket for Houston in February, first week of February. We hope to see you there. We'll have lots of industry demonstrations and presentations, as well as some team members here talking about the products that we hope serve you very well throughout the world here. So once again, 3dexperienceworld.com. We'll play a bit of a teaser. Just one last thank you. Thank you to all the presenters. Thank you to the crew. And thank you all for 30 amazing years. We hope for 30 plus more with you in the future. We will talk to you shortly. Take care.